So I've been thinking about doing one of these forever and just never got around to it. And over the time, over the months, the actually a couple years now, I've had this. I've just gotten like most YouTube people have. We get a ton of questions, and I try to always answer them back via the chat, not the chat, the comment section. Or I get a lot of stuff actually through email too. I get a crazy amount of stuff through email because I usually put my email onto my videos. So, because a lot of times people have, they need to contact me for another reason for something, as in, sending me something or, just want to ask me questions that, you know, don't really want to get into the comment section or whatever have you. But I get a lot of stuff across my email just as well. So over the time, the months, the years, I have been collecting questions, and I've never done one of these. I've never done like a Q and I've never done a live stream. That's coming up. I need to really start getting on a live stream. But I've been kind of collecting these questions forever. And, I keep looking at them and every time somebody asks me a question and I see a repeat, I just kind of make a mental note of it. This has been repeated, numerous times. And I thought, well, you know what? It's time I do one of these, and I don't know if it's something I'm doing for you guys or if it's just something I'm doing for me. Because I'm probably just doing it for me, to be honest with you, because I think it's pretty cool. I love getting questions, and I get a tremendous amount of questions across my comment section. So let's just go ahead and fire this off right out of the gate. I've been asked this question numerous times. What is your favorite guitar? And I got to tell you, that is kind of a hard one to answer because there's so many good guitars on the market nowadays. And the nice thing, since CNC is so prevalent, you can get really good guitars at a much lower price. Prime example, I was just talking to a guy about my Ibanez 5320, and he's buying one, and he was a Gibson guy, and he's I guess a convert over to Ibanez because simply for what you spend on the money, it's hard to beat an Ibanez. You just simply can't beat an Ibanez for the cash. I mean, it's just we're living in a world where PRS guitars, the one you want is going to be $5, $6, $7,000. New EVH Wolfgangs are what, 4,700 now. I mean, it's insane. So it's really hard to say what my favorite guitar is, but I can easily say that out of all the guitars I've had, my Ibanez J Custom absolutely is just an amazing guitar. I've never played a finer guitar than that J Custom. And then, of course, my EVH Wolfgangs. I mean, I love the EVH guitars, man. They are absolutely built like tanks. And I'm dying to get my hands on one of those MIJ because one of my other subscribers bought an MIJ. And he said he can't tell the difference between that and the American Wolfgang, except for the fact the American Wolfgang's what, $1,700 more dollars. And so I'm really kind of dying to get my hands on one of those because I've kind of put a cap on myself on guitars. So for favorite guitars, I would have to say probably I got to go with the Ibanez and the Wolfgangs. Out of all the guitars I've played, those are the two guitars I keep gravitating back to. Even though I buy other guitars, they just seem to not really last or hang around all that long because I always find them lacking something. Now, with that being said, I've never owned a PRS, but I have played dozens of PRSs. I mean, dozens. And I've yet to find that one that, when I played the J Custom, I was like, oh my God, this guitar is absolutely amazing. When I play the Wolfgangs, I just feel at home. I can jump on a Wolfgang and just start instantly playing. But out of all the PRSs I've played, I've just never found that one that I just played. And I was like, oh my God, I got to have this guitar. So for my favorite guitar, I'm going to have to say the brands Ibanez and the EVH Wolfgangs. And to break it down further from those, my J Custom, obviously. And then actually my PV Wolfgang 1996. That thing is just, it plays like a dream. I mean, it's just a fantastic guitar. So those are my favorite guitars in this world as of right now. Now, I've been asked several times what my worst guitar was, and dude, that is a hard one to answer. I've had a lot of crappy guitars over the years. You buy things and you check them out to see if they're any good. And I love Les Paul guitars, but Les Pauls just have too many inherent problems. to make it a daily player for me. And I know a lot of people play them. A lot of people love them, and that's cool. I love them. I love the tone of them. I love the feel because I like kind of a beefy guitar, a weighty guitar. But there's just too many. There's too many things on Les Pauls that I see as a problem that are easily rectified with other guitars. Um, I'm going to say my worst guitar to date. Well, I'm going to break this into two categories: my worst guitar and my biggest disappointment guitar. The worst guitar I've ever owned, believe it or not, is an Ibanez Jiva. I wanted to love that guitar so bad, and I ordered one, and it was absolutely terrible. Everything about that guitar was wrong. I mean, it played okay. The action was a little high on it. I thought the nut was a little too high off the fretboard, but the fretwork was some of the absolute worst fretwork I've ever seen on a guitar. And I'm talking $300 guitars. On that Jiva, it was worse. So I sent it back, and I just had him send me a second one because I really, really, really wanted to like this guitar. And it was equally as bad as the first one. The fretwork was shoddy. It had fret sprout like crazy, and it actually had some high frets on it. And I was like, well, how does this even get out of the factory, let alone the company who sold it to me? How did it even get past them? So I sent it back, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to try one more time because maybe I just got two bad ones. And I got a third Jiva, and there again, it was equally as bad. And I even paid to have this one plecked. And when I got the guitar, it still played like crap. So I actually sent it to my buddy, Rick, who has a music store here in town, who is the guy that's shown me how to do all the guitar work that I know how to do. And he even went over the frets after it had been plecked and still found that the frets were not perfect. And so I ended up sending that guitar back, and I said, that's it. I'm done with the Jivas. I'm never buying another one. I wouldn't mind trying out one of those Jiva 10s. They're pretty pricey if you can find one. But as far as the original Jiva, it was by far the worst guitar I've ever owned. And it kind of pains me to say because I love Ibanez guitars. Now, my biggest disappointment guitar was my Suhr Custom. I know people who play Suhrs and swear by them. To them, it is the end-all, be-all. It's the only guitar in the world. Suhr makes the best guitar. I don't care what you play. Nothing's better than a Suhr. Well, I bought one, and I paid like $3,700 for this guitar. And believe it or not, the 13th fret was low. So I had a severe fretting issue right around between 12 and 15 is where I do a lot of soloing. And I just had a severe sustain issue right there. And I thought this is absolutely unacceptable for the price of this guitar. And lo and behold, it was one of those things I thought, well, I'll deal with it. And then at one point, I'll just have to have this fret, lifted, filed, whatever we got to do to correct it. But then it cracked at the neck. And that absolutely stunned me. And I'm talking, I had this guitar 2 months. And then it cracked at the neck. And so I went back to the place I bought it, and they sent it back to Suhr. 8 weeks later, I still had heard nothing about my guitar. 8 weeks, $3,700 guitar. And to me, that is absolutely not acceptable. Not acceptable at all. So luckily, the dealer I bought it from was very, very cool, and he just refunded my money. And then come to find out, they got that guitar back like another 5-6 weeks after that. They finally got that guitar back and I guess put it back in stock. I don't know. But that's been my biggest disappointment because I really, really wanted to love that Suhr. Because I know a lot of people who play him and they swear by him. And the only one I have bought was a disaster. And I haven't been able to bring myself to buy another one simply because of that. Once burned type of thing. So, worst guitar, Ibanez Jiva 10. Ibanez Jiva, by far. And then the biggest disappointment was my Suhr Custom. Now, I've had a few people ask me what my favorite band is, because I guess on my videos, I kind of jump around a lot, because I do play piano, and, love him or hate him, I'm a massive Billy Joel fan, and if you don't like Billy Joel, well, I really don't care. I do. The guy's just, when you talk about the great songwriters of the world, you talk about the Paul McCartneys, the Stevie Nicks. Yes, she's a brilliant songwriter. The Billy Joels, who's a brilliant songwriter, the Bob Dylans. Um, these are all, to me, the pinnacle songwriters in this world. So, but I do jump around a lot musically on my channel. But asking anybody what their favorite band is, that's really kind of hard to say because I can break this down into multiple categories, which is what Rolling Stone should have done when they did their top 500 guitarists in the world. Idiotic article. Um, but if I had to pick one band overall, that would be really, really tough. It would be a very big toss-up between Rush and Pink Floyd as my overall number one band. It would be really hard to choose between those two. It would be easier for me to say what my top 5 bands are than what my number one is, because at any given time, these bands, to me, can kind of jump in and out of that slot. I love Pink Floyd. Absolutely love Pink Floyd. David Gilmour is just, he's David Gilmour. I love Rush. 3 guys who just did a world of amazing music, and there's never going to be another Rush. I mean, those guys were just absolutely phenomenal. And I would love for Rush, granted they do not have the great, the mighty, the master, Neil Peart, but I would love for them to find some phenom drummer and just do kind of like a tribute tour to Neil Peart. I think that would just be awesome, and to give all the fans just one more chance to hear that music live before Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson just absolutely call it a day. But I have Pink Floyd, Rush, love Queensryche, the original iteration of Queensryche. I am a massive Queensryche fan, and I know Operation Mindcrime was their heralded album, but for me, Empire. I love Operation Mindcrime, but Empire to me that's one of the best metal albums ever written in the world was Empire. It was just an absolute brilliant, brilliant album. And sorry, I'm getting a bazillion messages here. So those would be easily my top 3. But moving into my top 5, I would have to throw the Sammy Hagar era of Van Halen in there. Yes, I like the Sammy Hagar era better than the David Lee Roth. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. I like the tone better. I like the music better. Everything just got fuller. It seemed like when Sammy Hagar came around, and it's and don't get me wrong, I like the early iteration of Van Halen too. I just like the later iteration better, and that's simply just how it is. I love the Sammy Hagar version of Van Halen. And then coming to the number 5, it would have to be early Ozzy Osbourne with Randy Rhoads. Well, no, I can't say that. I'm going to say Ozzy all the way up through Zakk Wylde. When Zakk Wylde left, I just don't like the current music. The stuff he's put out in the last few years, I'm just not a fan of what Ozzy's put out. It seems like Randy Rhoads had that magic for Ozzy to write great music, and Zakk Wylde also had that same magic. And it seems like when he got rid of Zakk, the writing is just not there anymore. So that's probably my top 5. I can't pick just one. So I'm going, in no particular order, I'm going to go Rush, Pink Floyd, Van Halen, Sammy Hagar era, Queensryche, and then Ozzy Osbourne, everything Zakk Wylde and back. I'm going to say those are my top 5. I can't pick just one. It's impossible. Can't do it. All right, now this next one is kind of a two-parter. I've been asked this a couple of times from guys. So one is was my favorite amp of all time, and then do I prefer an amp or a modeler? So I'm going to answer the favorite amp first. Now I've had a tremendous amount of amps, and I was that guy. It was all about the show, the presentation, and when I had my my old band, when I played back with Kingfish and all that. I had a full Marshall JVM stack with a rack. My rhythm guitar player had a full EVH2 5152 full stack. My bass player had a SVT full stack. And then my drummer, man, I mean, the guy had like 976 drums. It was insane. We looked like, literally like Van Halen pulling in to play a venue. It was just beyond stupid, the amount of gear we had. And I loved my Marshall JVM. It was a great amp. And I love I love that it was MIDI controllable and I could just program all these tube channels. My favorite amp to date, however, has been the Randall MTS. I thought that was just an absolutely brilliant amp. It was also MIDI controllable, which I love. But you could pull the modules in and out. And it's really weird because for as cool as the MTS was, and it did get some, some heralding, people did love it, but it faded away relatively fast. And then Synergy came out, which is literally the same exact thing, and everybody's going gaga over Synergy. And I haven't played a Synergy, but I'm pretty sure it's no better than what the Randall MTS was. The Randall MTS was a monster freaking amp. And they made, and the brown, I can't remember the name of it, the actual module, but basically it was the 5153 amp, the module was, and Fender ended up suing, and this is what I read. I wasn't involved in this, obviously, but from what I understand is Fender ended up suing them because of that, because of the circuitry in it, and that ended that module right out of the gate, and I had one of those modules, and I'm going to tell you, dude, I love that MTS amp. I had a Fender Blackface for my clean. I had a Mesa Boogie module, a Rec 2 module. I had their own metal module, Randall's metal module, and I had that 5153 module, which was, it sounded exactly like a freaking 5153. And that's probably the coolest amp I've ever had, and I really liked that amp. But there again, it was a full stack, and it was crazy heavy. So that's probably been my favorite amp of all time. Now, I've never owned a Hughes & Kettner Triamp. To me, that has been always that one amp I've always wanted, but they're what, $5,700, something like that, $5,000 for just the head, which is a little insane to me. The prices of music equipment has just gotten absolutely asinine over the last 10 years. So I haven't played that. So right now, I'm going to say it's the Randall MTS. But now, amp or modeler, well, that kind of goes back to what do you want to do? I went with a modeler simply because I got tired of lugging all that shit around. I got so tired of carrying around all that heavy ass gear, and then all the time it took just to hook everything up, because I had a rack, a pedal board, plus a full stack. And then I was running a 4-cable method out of the back of my head into my rack, because that's where I had a rack mount noise gate, my wireless and all that. Then I had wires running from my head into my pedal board, back to the rack. It was just really a super complicated wiring setup. And it was so complicated, I actually had everything color-coded. I had like a blue piece of tape on every input where the blue cable went, a green piece of tape on every input where the green cable went. It was just insane. And so that really started to become kind of a pain in the ass. And I went over and I bought a Helix. And I got to be honest, I did not like the Helix at all. No matter how much I tweaked, I could not get a good distortion sound out of it. Everything sounded digital and sounded grindy. I just could not get a good sound out of the Helix. And maybe it was me, but that's just been kind of my history with Line 6. I've never been able to get really good tones out of their equipment. And I've tried literally everything that they've had to date, and I could never get it to work. So then I switched over to the Kemper, which I absolutely loved. The amps on the Kemper are just phenomenal. And the thing I love about a Kemper is just like working an amp. If you know how to work an amp and a pedal board, you know how to work a Kemper. It works exactly the same. And I love that about the Kemper. But I did find the effects. Now, they were probably better now, but I did find the effects a little bit lacking in the Kemper. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were standing in a donut store, believe it or not, chit-chatting, and he's a big advocate for Fractal. So I thought, well, how good can it really be? Can it be that much better? So I went ahead and bought a Fractal. I bought the FM3, but I bought the big controller with the plans of upgrading to the Axe effects if I really liked it. And when I bought the Kemper, I ended up selling off the bulk of my analog gear. When I bought the Fractal, I ended up selling the rest. The effects in the Fractal are just phenomenal. I love the size of the Fractal. It's small. Now when I go to a show, I carry a couple of guitars in a bag that has my Fractal rig in it. That's it. That's all I carry. Now, granted, I'm not talking about PA systems and all that. I'm just talking about my rig. Because before I was carrying a full stack with a rack with a pedal board. And it was just insane. It was insane. So for me, I think the modeling world has gotten to the point. Now, Fractal and Kemper pretty much dominate this world right now. But I think modeling has got to the point to where it has gotten so good, I don't miss my analog gear at all anymore. And actually, when I go to shows, I've had so many other guitar players ask me, dude, your tone is crazy. What is it? Then when I tell them what it is, that means it's like their head just falls off. They're expecting, somewhere to see this, freaking, some kind of crazy little amp head with an ISO box and all these, pedals and stuff. No, it's just a fractal. It's just a tweaked out fractal. So favorite amp is my Randall MTS, and then amp or modeler for me, modeler all the way. It's to the point, and I love analog gear. All right, how to adjust a truss rod. Now, I've done multiple videos on this, but I get this question, almost every day. Every day. How do I do this? How do I do this? And I guess sometimes it's just easier for me to type it out and for them to read it than it is to watch the video, and I get that. I absolutely get that. So, some people are, I'm a reader. I can watch a video on how to do something and won't remember anything. But then I can read it and I will remember everything. So that's just, just give me the book and leave me alone. Just give me the book and let me read. So when adjusting a truss rod, if the guitar is sitting in front of you with the neck to your left and the body to your right, if the adjustment is at the top, when you put the wrench in, you pull it to you to straighten it up. And the easy way that I remember this is if I'm sitting in a chair and I'm humped over like this, if I want to straighten up, I lean back. Same thing with the neck. If you got the wrench in and you want to straighten the neck, pull it back, and that'll take the relief out of the neck. To put the relief in the neck, pull it forward. Remember, 1/4-inch turns. I've said this in every video. Little adjustments make huge differences on a guitar. So only do 1/4-inch turns. So if it's at the body, it's the opposite. But if your adjustment is in the neck, pull it towards you with the guitar laying down, head here, body here, pull it towards you to straighten the neck, push it away from you to add relief. If I could only have one guitar, what would it be? I got to be honest. I don't know if I can answer that question. That would be tough. I made a video a long time ago, and I said, you ever notice when you walk into a guitar store, you can find every guitar in the world except the one you want? And I truly believe that. Nobody makes the perfect guitar. Nobody. Because what's a perfect guitar to me will not be a perfect guitar to everybody else in the world. So I'm going to do this like in a twofer. If I could only have one guitar, what would it be? But what would my perfect guitar be? If I could only have one guitar, I would probably want my Ibanez J Custom, because it is just a absolutely crazy slick guitar. Plays phenomenally. But with that being said, I would want the pickups and the controls out of an EVH Wolfgang in a J Custom. And I think that would be the ultimate guitar. I really do. Besides the fact that EVH guitars are just absolutely amazing guitars. They're amazing, amazing guitars. It's Eddie Van Halen, dude. And if Eddie Van Halen doesn't know how to make a guitar, then nobody does. The thing I like about my Wolfgangs is the control. And I don't own another guitar that has. Even my Les Pauls don't have the control, and EVH does. When you start to taper off the volume, and I don't care how much gain you have, when you start to roll that volume knob on EVH, it starts tapering instantly. There's so much control over that volume knob on that guitar. And that is one of the things I love about the EVH is the control. Because a lot of times you play things, to where you just roll your volume back, full on, however you want it. And crazily, the tone knob is just as good. As soon as you start moving that tone knob, you instantly start getting results. On my Ibanez's, in order for me to play a distorted tone that I really want to clean up with my volume, I actually have to run a very low gain channel to do that. On my main channel, my main gigging channel, which is pretty gainy, I have my gain sitting at 12 o'clock on basically what would be a Marshall JVM. On my Ibanez's, I don't get any significant change till I roll the volume down to about 3. I instantly start hearing change on my Wolfgangs as soon as it sweeps past 8. And if I could have an Ibanez J Custom with all the electronics, and ultimately that's what I'm going to do to my J Custom, just so everybody knows, is I'm probably going to end up switching out the pickups. I'm going to go with something that's more PAF style in my Ibanez, which it kind of is now with the pickups that are in it, which actually the pickup in it was one of the pickups that was designed for Eddie Van Halen, by the way. The Tone Zone was actually an EVH pickup. But I'm probably, when it's all said and done, I'm definitely going to put the electronics setup in the Ibanez, and probably put a set of Wolfgang pickups in the Ibanez too. I'm kind of curious to how it'll sound. It should sound, it's not going to sound vastly different, let's be honest. And but the control, the one thing my J Custom does not have that I wish it had is the control of the EVH. So if I could have just one guitar, it would be my Ibanez J Custom with all the electronics from the EVH in it. Couple more, and then I'm going to wrap this one up. Sorry, this one is a little long, but I've never done one of these, and I got a lot more. These are just the ones I picked right off the top. Why don't you do more lead lessons? Very, very good question. I love doing lead lessons, but I'm a big advocate of the theory. And if you watch any of my videos, you understand I've got a crazy amount of theory that I do, because without the theory, I don't care how good you are of a guitar player. Without the theory, you're only going to be able to go this far. You're never going to get to here. You have to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So I try to concentrate more on the theory side than I do on the lead playing side. Now, that may sound like a cop-out or whatever have you, but one of the biggest reasons I don't do a tremendous amount of lead how-tos is because there's so many on YouTube. There are tens of thousands that come out every single day. And I just don't want to keep doing the same thing everybody else is doing. When I come up with something, like I've got an exercise, I got a video coming up, breaking through the speed wall, coming up. And it's just an exercise to kind of help. Because if you notice, a lot of guitar players, when you're even through your intermediate stage, you can play really slow or really, really, really fast, but you always have that point in the middle that you're not that great. And that's what this exercise is about, is breaking through that wall. And I've got that coming up, and, it's still a few videos out before I do that, but there's so many videos that come out. I'm a very small fish in an ocean of guitar players. And there's just, every night when I turn on YouTube, because I always look at YouTube before I go to bed, see what's happening. I just get inundated with, lead after lead after lead after lead. Improve your lead. Improve this part of your lead playing. Improve that part of your lead playing. Improve your right hand. Improve your left hand. Synchronize your hands. It's just a constant flurry of lead stuff. And I just don't want to keep doing the same thing everybody else is doing. So I do not do a lot of lead lessons. I do a lot more chordal stuff, because that's what it all comes down to, is the chords. Because you're playing a lead over chords. And so you have to understand what this part is before you even have a clue what this part is. So I do a lot of chordal stuff and a lot of theory stuff. And occasionally I'll break into the lead stuff. When I do, like I got a video coming up on we're going to learn a Queensryche song. And of course I'm going to do the leads and all that stuff in it as I go through there. But that's why I don't do a tremendous amount of lead lessons, because there's just thousands of them. I mean, thousands a day hit the airwaves. And I just don't want to keep doing the same thing everybody else is doing. So this last question, because if you've watched my videos, any of my lesson videos, you've heard me talk about intervals over and over and over and over and over and over. And somebody finally, and this is the only time I've been asked this, but I thought this was important. Really? How important are intervals? Intervals are everything in music. You must understand what your intervals are. Case in point, I'm teaching my wife how to play piano. And now, unfortunately for her, she lives with me, obviously, but she gets all my knowledge at once. I mean, that poor girl, I bet her head is so full of stuff, it's not even funny. because normally when I used to teach, I had very specific lessons. I would teach from A to B, and that was it. I would not go by B. And when your next lesson came along, if you had mastered B, we would go to C. But if you hadn't mastered B, guess what? For that week, you're working on B again. And it was very structured. But with my wife, it's just kind of, because I want to get her up and running as fast as I can. And I know I can overload her, and I know I do that with information. But when I was talking to her, there's a couple things that people seem to, one of the things that really people struggle with when they're new is, why am I playing a black key on a piano? Why is this a minor? Why is this a major? Well, I'm going to do a video on that. How to understand what a major and minor is. And don't just learn all the minor chords and remember them and all the major chords and remember them. Why is it minor? Why is it major? Well, you lower the third a half step. That is true. Why do you lower the third a half step? And how do you figure out, if you're playing a song in C sharp, how do you figure out what's minor and what's major? Just by working your way through it. Well, one of the ways to figure everything out is through the intervals. The intervals are integral to you learning music. And I've talked about this, I think, on the last video I did. If you're playing with a band and somebody comes up and says the song's in the key of G, it's a 1-4-5 progression. What do you do? Well, if you don't know the intervals, then you're kind of screwed. Well, if you know the first interval is G, because he said it's in the key of G. So you count up G, A, B, C, D. So you have a G, C, D progression, a 1-4-5. All right. But are they major or minor? And these are the things you have to know. And these are the things the intervals tell you. Because your one chord, your tonic in intervals, is always a major. Your 4 and 5 is always a major. Your 2 and 3 is always a minor. Your 6 is always a minor, because your minor 6 is the relative minor of the major scale. Your 7 is always a diminished. And that's why intervals are so important. And I say this over and over and over and over. And the thing is I've linked to my my interval video a million times, and this hardly has any views. And that's actually one of the most important videos on my channel, are the intervals. And I do have another one coming up, by the way. But the intervals are always going to let you know what the chords are, always, just from the progression. And they're going to let you know if they're major or minor chords, always just from the progression, just from the major scale. You're always going to know what the chords you're playing are. And it's going to let you know where to solo. If you're playing a 1-4-5 progression, and I'm playing a G, C, D, well, C, G, okay, so I know I need to solo in G major. C, I know I need to solo in C major. D, I know I need to solo in D major, or the relative minor. You can do that. But what if I'm playing A, if I'm playing over the second, well, now I know I need to solo in the minor chord. And that's why intervals are so important. And I'm going to say this, and we're going to wrap it up. In the world of music, the notes and chords always change. Always change. The intervals never change. They're always the same. Learn the intervals, and then your musical ability will start stepping up tremendously. So that is the first installment ever of questions and comments. I'm not going to say Q&A. Well, it could be Q&A. I guess it could be Q&A. I like questions and comments better. Yeah, I'm going to go with Q&A. You know what? I'm going to go with Q&A. I'm not going to do an FAQ, frequently asked questions, because sometimes you get asked questions once, and you're like, well, that's important enough for me to say something. So please, if you have any questions or comments, drop them down in the comment section. I do answer all questions. I do reply to all comments. Sometimes it'll take me a day or two to get around to it, but good or bad, I answer everything. And also, please subscribe to my channel. It costs you nothing to subscribe. If you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel. I try to keep a lot of great content coming up on the channel, things that I find that people, I hope, think are useful, and just some fun stuff every once in a while, just some really cool stuff. And if you want to support my page even further, you can jump over to my Patreon. You can support my page for as little as $1 a month, and what that gets you, the $1 a month, gets you anything that I put up on Patreon, you pretty much get for the $1 a month. And you cannot even buy a pack of gum for $1 a month. Any charts, chord charts, any tabs that I do, any backing tracks, whatever it is I do, you get for that $1 a month. So if you want to support further, please join my Patreon page. we're going to wrap it up right there until the next video, which actually I'm getting ready to shoot right after this. Like the great Sammy Hagar says, if you miss a beat, you lose the rhythm and nothing falls into place. And no matter what you do, for the love of God, rock on.